Okay, happy Thursday. I can't believe it's the 20th of October. And just to let you know, today is Lois's real birthday, but tomorrow we're going to celebrate. So anyway, this is Natural Links and a Long Chain of Being. And it's written by a Victor Hanson, who is a classics and military history scholar. And he's a professor emeritus at California State University in Fresno. And his family has a farm which includes 40 acres of seedless grapes grown for raisins. And he hopes that his son William will succeed him in tending the farm. So I don't know whether that has happened, but anyway, I believe we are not alone. Even if I am on the other side of the world from the farmhouse I live in, I still dream of the ancient vines out the window and the shed out back my grandfather's father built in 1870 with eucalyptus trunks. As long as I can recreate these images, I never quite leave home. I do not think farming in the same place for 6 generations is a dead weight that keeps you shackled, doing the identical thing year in and year out. Instead, it is a rare link to others before me who pruned the same vines and painted the same barn that I have. If those in this house survived the panic of 1893 or the Great Depression, or bathed with cold water and used an outhouse, then surely I know I can weather high gas prices. I believe that all of us need some grounding in our modern world of constant moving, buying, selling, meeting, and leaving. Some find constancy in religion. Others lean on friends or community for permanence. But we need some daily signposts that we are not novel, not better, not worse from those who came before us. For me, this house, this farm, these ancient vines are those roots. Although I came into this world alone and will leave alone, I am not alone. There are ghosts of dozens of conversations in the hallways, stories I remember about buying new plows that now rust in the barnyard, and ruined crops from the same vines that we are now harvesting. I believe all of us are natural links in a long chain of being. I need to know what time of day it is, what season is coming, whether the wind is blowing north or from the east, and if the moon is still full tomorrow night, just as the farmers who came before me did. The physical world around us changes constantly. Human nature does not. We must struggle in our brief existence to find some transcendent meaning during reoccurring heartbreak and disappointment, and so find solace in the knowledge that our ancestors have all gone through this before. You might find all that too intrusive, living with the past as present. I find it exhilarating. I believe there is an old answer for every new problem, that wise whispers of the past are with us to assure us that if we just listen and remember, we are not alone. We have been here before. Nice essay. And how I came upon this essay as I was writing my essay, kind of flipped through this book for inspiration, and this kind of popped. And I said, oh, I just need to read this, to continue this, this chain of chi energy, which I truly appreciate very much. So what are your thoughts? Natural links and a long chain of being. Linda.
Alco, good morning, everyone. My favorite author Florence Scovel Shinn wrote something very similar. She wrote, "Everyone is a golden link in the chain of my good." So I resonate with that part of the book, that part of the essay. It's beautiful. I really feel that we are not alone, and that's always good. That's a good reminder. It was a lovely essay. I really liked it.
And what was the name of the author again that you?
Oh, Florence Scovel Shinn. She wrote The Game of Life and How to Play It.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's a lovely reminder to kind of reread some of these things. Sue.
I feel like that notion of knowing where we come from and and those kinds of feelings are very prominent. You know, we're a country that was really started by immigrants, and so, you know, we have that, you know, like ancestry.com, and here in New York we've got Ellis Island, which I know my grandparents went through Ellis Island. But at any rate, I think it's important to know where you come from, even if it's not a good place for whatever reason, because it informs us about who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, even if you look at the generation that you actually could touch, right? Your own parents. You may have had a very tumultuous, I'm describing my own. You may have had a very tumultuous relationship, for example, with your mother or your father, and that may cause you to be a complete opposite in how you are with your own children, if you have children. Or, you know, you may have found where your grandparent came from, and if you knew your grandparent, it has a certain meaning to you, and it gives you, it kind of pushes you up a bit. It gives you higher chi because you know where you come from. So I think that that's a very important thing. But I really wonder, you had said something, I don't know if it was actually part of the essay or just an aside that was written prior, about hoping that this child of his will take over this farm. And you know, how many TV shows and movies have you seen where that whole notion just collapses in on itself? So it's kind of interesting. And, you know, of course, it can be transcendental too, when you're open to the transcendental tap on the shoulder.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the sidebar. Right, it was the author who was hoping that his son would take over his farm. Be
Right.
interesting whether he did or not, but and just kind of, I don't know, I'll just make my comment. I was just thinking about, you know, like connecting to Cousin Lana, you know, and connecting to the ancestral home in China, and how that kind of rekindled, you know, my connection with my family. And also it's kind of interesting to observe, I don't know, I think Lana and I, we have a certain chi energy about reconnecting to the family, but I also see there are other members of my family who don't even care about the other members of the family. So it's very interesting, maybe because we have such a large family, but I don't think it really matters whether we have a large family or a small family. I don't think it really matters. I think it's just about, you know, how we connect, you know, our relationships to each other. And so, and, you know, the ancestral home in China really got me. And and obviously I see maybe I know that is and will be my next part of the journey, is somehow stay connected with my family in some manner, you know, to cousins I haven't talked to in years, and just kind of bring back those memories, and maybe just planting seeds of, you know, just that aspect. But that's what this essay kind of reminded me, you know, he's always going back to the farm, the roots, and that analogy. And even though he's traveled or whatever, but he always thinks about, you know, growing those grapes and, you know, the seasons. And so anyway, That's kind of like my little commentary, thoughts.
I guess I should go next. I when I listened to the words, I didn't get the same peaceful feeling that I think some of you got. I was kind of more thinking about how I wish my mother and my mother-in-law, who's both in their 80s, would think of their life as I can't even say the words. I'm not sure what's going on in their lives, but it's full of turmoil. And I think because they're aging and they feel like their end is not too far away, instead of trying to connect with my children and the family to give good memories about their lives, they're sort of like grasping at situations to try and just connect in a very inauspicious way. I don't know what to say. It's kind of sad, actually. And so I'm going through that right now, trying to take care of my children, whose both grandmothers call them constantly and tell them about, how their life is going for the day. And it's very depressing for them. And so instead of trying to get my mother and mother-in-law to be positive and try to impart some good wisdom to the children and help them, it's kind of opposite. And I'm not sure why this story brought these memories up for me. So I'm not sure if there's any relationship with that, but perhaps it would be nice that they would have had this connection with their immediate family in a more positive way. But I could see why they're feeling vulnerable right now. So trying to get them through that is a little tough between my parents, between my mother and mother-in-law and my kids. So my husband and I are trying to get that done. Yeah. So
actually a thought crossed my mind, talk about, tending the soils or changing the farm, so to speak, or changing the crops. Maybe there's something about you and your husband to help teach your kids to try to connect to the grandmothers and try to help uplift the grandmother's chi energy on both sides. And maybe that would be, this is right. Talk about tending the farm, tending the family and trying to change the chi. So, the grapes don't become raisins.
exactly.
Anyway, Sue, you have to unmute.
Sometimes it's good to have open-ended positive questions, like at your fingertips when the phone rings, like to change the conversation. When my Aunt Shirley was really, as she got older, she was the only woman left on our side of the family. And we would go and film her. I would go with my brother and we would videotape her, but we would ask her questions and give her things to talk about her life. For example, she grew up in Coney Island. What was it like growing up in Coney Island? You may still get negative responses, like what was the journey like when you came to the United States, things like that. But at least you'll be filling in some blanks, maybe historically, and get them to think other than about what's happening during that day that is making them feel impacted. I don't know if this will work. I'm only offering it as a possible.
No, I think that's a good idea. I've been trying different methods. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, thank you.
Good luck, Lana.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, we actually did that, Sue. Not, I shouldn't say we. I found that I wish I had kind of done it sooner. My dad would open up. My mom at the end, when we asked her stuff after he died, she couldn't remember. We still don't know one of my aunt's names. We're not really sure. And she fell between census. She died when she was very little. So she fell kind of between the cracks, and it's interesting. But I had an experience with Bill's mom, who's 93 right now. And this was probably maybe 5 years or so ago. And her children don't like her. They don't want to really, they're around her because they have to be. And it's kind of sad. And I can understand it, but she's not my mother. I don't have that dynamic. And she's traveled the world. She's very smart. And kind of at happy hour, she lives in La Jolla in California. I would invite her out, because she'd just be milling around the house just to sit with us, even if she didn't want a glass of wine or whatever. And she would talk about her travels to me, and I would ask her questions. And Bill said to me, that's the most that she's ever talked, I think, ever. And I said, because no one asks her. No one wants to engage with her. And again, I have a different dynamic. She's not my mother, so I don't have all that baggage and everything. But like Sue said, I found that she got really excited. I really wanted to talk to her about his sister that was killed when she was 9. But that's off limits, Bill said. Like, why would I want to make her sad? And I said, it's not to make her sad. I think it's keeping the memory alive. And she'll mention her once in a while and get very, animated. But I really agree that maybe trying to engage them, and that would be great. And I think about that now, like what I know, what my sister knows, what some other relatives know, we really need to write down, because we have some papers and we're looking into certain things, but my kids won't know, their kids won't know. So I think that's important. And I like what he spoke about, our ancestors going through stuff, like the plagues and depressions and things like that. And we look at our lives, and, we were talking about comparisons, right? Yesterday, kind of on the same vein. And I think about my grandparents coming here. I think they both might have been on the lam. Actually, it's could be questionable, but and what my mother went through as a young girl, I just can't even imagine, so when we think about that, I don't know, I liked that. It's a good reminder. It's a good reminder. And of all the things that, I don't know if this was part of it or if I'm thinking of something else, like all the things that we have, I think it's time, like he said, to till the soil in a different way and change things up. And I still go back to what Nancy said too before about buying experiences, because I've been telling Bill to do that for like the last year or so. Like, I don't want a lot of stuff. I just want to go to a concert. I want to go see friends, that type of thing. And I think as we get older, we see, and as our parents got older, what's important, the friends and the memories, and kind of keeping it going, keeping the family going.
Thank you. Thoughts? Johan, you're my center screen.
I had a very happy day yesterday. My niece from Hamburg, Hannah, came over for a day trip with two of her sons, 7 and 5 years old, Pelle and Willem. And we had a very happy day. We went to the Historical Natural History Museum and saw some dinosaurs and so on. And it's very rare that my nephews and nieces come visiting me here in Berlin. So it was a very special day. And we had a lot of time to talk about family, my parents, their grandparents, grandparents. So I'm very happy that I have a family where I have different members. We can talk about the past generation, about my grandparents. Even my aunt, who's 92 now, she's writing a book about her grandmother, who was born in 1875 or something like this. And she does a lot of work. I hope she's going to finish this book. I always say, hurry, aunt. You don't know how long you can write down. But there I see different layers in this essay. I see this, I'm from a farm, and we have, I think, 4 generations run this farm. My grandfather, my father, my brother, and now his son.
Wow.
But the farming has changed completely. So it's not about take care of nature anymore. It's more exploiting and exploiting nature, getting out of the soil as much as you can, producing meat. It's like, I think it's more industry, and the author sees it more romantically, the grapes, and for 6 generations. Maybe this is different when you have this special thing like wine, or when I see my family, the bees, the beekeeper family. So my nephew, who is now having the farm of the family, I think this has nothing to do with romantic wine grapes. It's something completely different. But 2 of my other nephews go back to growing natural, to do organic farming, a very small project, but and they are both beekeepers. So I had this discussion with my niece yesterday, because it's strange that they went back to the roots of farming and going another way than the family tree, I say, and exploiting nature and, you know, getting out of the soil as much as you can. So I see this natural link. I'm happy that I have this natural link to my family, and that this is very special to me, that this visit was very special to me. I was very happy. I had a lot of time, a lot of good time, and it made me very happy also to see that there is that we know each other so good, and we have a lot to talk. But on the other hand, let me say, farming has completely changed, and so this analogy is not perfect for me.
Thank you for sharing, Johan. Dee.
Yes. Things keep coming up. First off, Tammy, there's a Seinfeld episode where the character George is trying to find out more about the females in his ancestry. And he asked his mother about them. And she said, well, we had an Aunt Baby. And he goes, what do you, Aunt Baby? Well, Aunt Baby died very young, and she didn't get a name. So we call her Aunt Baby. So he reminded me of that, just cracked me up. But it brought up a couple of things for me. Like when I was very, very small, like a toddler, my grandmother, she always lived with us, but my grandmother she grew food out behind the house. And it was one of my most vivid memories. And I just loved being out there with her. And I was so small that everything was huge and like taller than me. And tomatoes looked this big, and corn was just like the Empire State Building. And she loved it so much. And she would like talk to me about the fruits and the vegetables, and I would be out there picking them with her. And it was the only vegetables that I really liked, or that I would eat, was what my grandmother would bring in. Then when I was 5, we moved to this other house, and it was in a much fancier part of town, and there were rules, and nobody could grow food there. Well, I guess if you had a small piece of land behind your house, you could grow something and no one would know. But our house sat on the end of the block, so there was no backyard, but a huge side yard. So my mother wouldn't let my grandmother plant any food because she was afraid we would look like peasants. Like we needed the food, so we had to grow our own. So my grandmother was very, very upset and depressed about it. And of course I too. And I just stopped eating vegetables. My mother started buying these like blocks of frozen vegetables, from the grocery store, and she would just overcook them till they were mush, and it became this lifelong battle over food, and vegetables with my mother that was, oh God, one day culminated in her trying to convince me that if she mixed the peas with the mashed potatoes, I wouldn't notice they were there. She'd grab my forearm and like rammed a spoonful of mashed potatoes and peas in my mouth. And I just projectile vomited the whole thing like back on top of her. I'll never forget it. But anyway, that aside, a lifetime of food issues, dealing with that stuff. But, this man who wrote this was extremely blessed and extremely rare, I think, to have had this handed down to him. So that he was lucky enough to have these feelings, how many of us have that lineage and have that blessing of the generations, handing this down to us and teaching us and having that connection. And then I went on to think, it's when you go back to it, it's very, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Evil, I guess. There's a better word, but diabolical, the way we as white people broke up the families when we brought slaves here. There's a definite, there's a way to destroy a culture. There's a way to destroy a society, and it's by separating the families, and you don't know where you came from, and you don't know who your parents and your grandparents are, or anything. You don't know anything about your lineage. And I guess, if you're really strong, you make you make that yourself. You make your own family, you make your own roots, and you teach this to your kids, and you're lucky enough to bloom your own strong family. But how many people, didn't have the strength to do that, or, didn't have the capability to build that for themselves. And it's really sad when you think about it. Well, those are my thoughts on it.
I'm sure there are many, many more thoughts that could come from this conversation. Definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Miss Nancy, you're my Kuan Yin in the corner.
A lot of stuff is swirling through my head. I'm thinking of Lana and her mother and her mother-in-law. A couple of weeks ago, I went down to see my mother. She's 95. She's in hospice. She's been around the world. She's lived a life. She was in China when the tanks came in. She was in Watts in the riot. She's lived a life, but it was her life. And for the past couple of years, I've been encouraging her to write a journal, tell the kids about it. These are great stories, but that's not her interest. I think at this point, it's not her job to tell them how to live their life or what they could do right or what they could do wrong. She has her memory. She's content to sit there every day and maybe think about her old boyfriend, George. At her wedding, somebody stood up and gave a toast and said, "Here's to George." Well, my father's name is Bill. They were toasting the old boyfriend. So that'll make her laugh. But my two kids could care less. They could care less. That was, that was 75 years ago. And what do they care? It's got nothing to do with them. So, maybe these two ladies are content with just dealing what they have to deal with every day, and they don't feel it's their job to have to explain. Maybe they don't, like the farmer. Maybe he doesn't want to talk about the years that he starved or the nights that he came in from the fields after dark and was aching, and they didn't have enough hot water to take a decent bath, and they'd had to deal with cold water. Maybe some memories they don't want to talk about. That was their life then, and the bad years, the depression, the hard work, maybe it's not in their best interest to have to spread that to the next generations. My favorites are barns and farms. I love them. In this country, we don't have like European villages that go back hundreds of years or thousands of years. We don't have cathedrals that were built in the 1300s. The closest we have to a history of community is the farms and the barns and the little small towns. And maybe it's good to think about what type of character it took to create those farms and those barns. They had to go out and chop those trees and mill them and hammer nails or learn tongue and groove. They had to learn the skills to live and to make a family and to make a community. But maybe they don't want to talk about the blisters and the freezing cold winters that they were out logging the trees and stuff. So, looking into the past is good. There's a lot to learn from the past. But like Jochen said, the past is not the present, and some of it's not relevant anymore. Some of it just doesn't work in this day and age. So the younger kids, yes, they should know their families. They should know a little bit about their history, but it's up to them to work the details and to figure out how to go forward and not to rely on, well, this is how you should do this. And this is how this is how we made medicine then. And there's people that will make it their life's mission to pass that on. People that write herbal books and, country medicine. And there's people that go, I'm just glad that time is over and I'm not sick and I can go to the supermarket. I don't have to go out and grow corn in my backyard. So I think every individual is individual, and try not to take it personal. Maybe that's not their mission right now to be a historian.
Oh, thank you. Great perspective. I love it. I love this conversation. Sue.
I was trying to remember where I saw this. I just saw it yesterday. There was a small video segment about this man who's in his 60s now, but in the 1970s in England, in London, there was a parcel of land, and it was a great social experiment where people were invited, if they wanted to come build their own home, create their own habitat with like-minded people. And each person got, I think, a parcel of land and building plans. And the group would build one home at a time, and the homes were designed by this architect so that they could be modified to fit whatever family was living there, but also to live and breathe like a family does, so they could easily be expanded or changed or whatever. And so this man was on yesterday and he spoke about the history that I just gave you, but then went on to talk about how he loves welcoming the generations into his home and talking about the history of the home and how the whole area came about. Anyway, it's interesting in light of this conversation, and I'll also tell you that I went on a walk with a bunch of my friends. And at a certain point, when I said, well, you know, it's been a few years since your brother did X, Y, and Z, and you have this other wedding coming, maybe something has changed and he'll be different toward this whole thing. And she said, and I quote, "Shut the fuck up with your positivity. Nobody wants to hear it." So that being said, at first I thought to myself, I'm really mortally wounded by this. I'd be dead if I didn't think this way. I'd be dead literally 10 times over. And I'm thinking more and more to myself, this is just who I am. Can't you just accept me? And my daughter, Goldie, called, who was best friends with their youngest son from their entire child till they got into high school or graduated, whatever. And she said, "She's just a scary person, Mom, but we all love her." So, you know, there's always going to be a different side. There's always going to be a different take of how we look at things. But we can present, you know, we can ask. It doesn't mean we're going to get what we want, but we can always ask. And if the ask is rejected, you know, so I'm taking a few days of vacation from my friend so that I can let go of any negative feelings I have, because really we're very good friends, and just move on from there. So it's that, you know, it's the same thing in its way.
Yep, it's always good to take some space sometimes.
Yes.
Definitely. And then you'll come back together again, and you know, and you move forward, and this is where you make a choice. You make a choice to remain as the friends, or you make a choice to, like, you know, I don't want to talk to you ever again. So these are the choices that we choose, and the relationships that we create, you know, for ourselves. So
I saw a video on Facebook this morning. A young man, he's down in Texas somewhere, and he refurbishes cowboy hats. It's an art. Felt cowboy hats. So he has to deconstruct them and clean the felt and steam them and put new sweatbands in them. So he was working on a hat showing how he did it, and the hat had a big hole in the middle of it. And he said, "Oh, the client came in, this hat is 70 years old. It's his grandfather's hat, and I'm gonna clean it up so that he could wear it." And he told me there's lots of stories connected to it. So he does this 20-minute video of how he cleaned it and put a new band and new feathers and blocked it. And it was an involved thing, but he never told how the hole got there. So I'm reading the comments, and one person said, well, every time, very frequently, when the guys tip their hats to women in the towns, that spot would wear out, there'd be a hole. Somebody else said, well, he was telling stories to his wife. He'd come home, he'd take the hat off, hang it on the hook that wore it out, made the hole. And the stories are the stories that he told his wife about his daily work as a cowboy. Somebody else said, no, it was in the cupboard and a mouse made a nest in it. And somebody else said, no, those are holes that the moths eat through it. Well, he did this whole thing on how to refurbish this hat. The man came and picked it up, never told the story about how that hole got there. So, you know, I think the lesson was have the skills, be able to refurbish these things and to preserve them and to interact, but you're never going to get the real story, the whole story. That's not your story, it's their story. You want to make your own new stories. Somebody else goes, oh yeah, that's where the Indian shot me with the arrow. And so it's stories. Bottom line, the hat's still there, it's still serviceable, but everybody's going to make their own story up about it.
Thank you. That's a great little tidbit. Anyway, so let's take some time. This is wonderful to be with you today. And just to remind, tomorrow is Lois's birthday. We'll celebrate her birthday tomorrow. And we'll do a nice little meditation together. How about that to close today?
I'm going to leave you guys. So
Okay.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Have a beautiful day, Tammy.
Too. Enjoy the sunshine. Have a nice night, Jochen.
And Johan, would you still have time to stay and maybe do a little closing? Would that be okay? Oh, great. That'll be nice. Great. So let's just relax. And Dee has put on her beautiful ocean waves and the clouds. And Jochen is wearing Mani Padme Yom on his shirt. That's beautiful. Anyway, so let's just relax and breathe. Have our feet flat on the floor. Sit comfortably in our chairs. Clear our minds. And let's begin with the ringing of the bells. So just relax and breathe. Gently inhale and exhale. Clear our minds and maybe visualize ourselves on the farm with the vines growing on the fences or on the trees or the bushes. Inhale. Inhale the fall weather breezes. The clouds are gently rolling by. And just relax. Relax our entire being. And maybe imagine that we are one with the tree or the bamboo or a lotus flower. And the roots are gently, gently flowing through our being, connecting down into the earth, holding hands with Mother Earth. And our hearts are just open, connecting to the universe, to God, to Mother Nature. And just feel the warmth of the sun. See the moon. The rains are gently falling. Just breathe. Breathing in and breathing out. Just continue breathing gently. Inhale and exhale. As we sit together in a circle at the farm, maybe hear the barn owls or the doves or the gentle whispers of the leaves rustling in the tree. Just be. All of our roots are joined as one. Breathe. So let's all gently, gently come gather together, sitting in a circle in a beautiful pumpkin field, orange pumpkins surrounding us. Our hands are joined as one, and our hearts is sharing its light, its wisdom, its strength, and resilience. Now gently, gently take our hands and place it over our hearts and just welcome the chi. It's the fall, the harvest, the moon, the sun. And let's close our time together with the ringing of the bell.
Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om. Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om. Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om, Om Mani Padme Om.
Om Mani Padme Om. The 6 true words just filled with harmony, balance, love, and gratitude. Gently, gently release our palms. Slowly waken our chi cells, rub our palms together, and then you can caress your face or clean your face and gentle little tap, 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 tap along your face and our forehead and our head, and rub your ears gently and gentle little taps along the meridians of your arms, top part of your arm, bottom part, along our shoulders, our hearts, our organs, a little gentle tap dance on the earth, and do a little shake, 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 shake. Yes. It's a beautiful autumn day. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much, Johan. It was beautiful. And have a beautiful day, folks. I'm going to turn off the recording.